I have been involved in this disclosure program for, officially since January of 2022. I went to Washington, D.C. I met with staffers out of the Senate office, Senator Rubio's staffers. Met with some behind-the-scene intelligence people. I'm a member of a group we call the Advanced Working Group. The members are mostly retired intelligence officers or retired military, some scientists, some retired scientists, some very, very few active intelligence officers and or active duty military personnel. And our job is to facilitate disclosure, facilitate whistleblowers that we can find or approach us first, and then bring them in contact with the Senate, the staffers at the Senate, Senator Rubio and some of the other senators. That's what my goal is. My goal is to get disclosure out there any way we can do it. There are certain things, and I understand, having worked in intelligence for 12 years and then with Dr. Putoff at the Institute for Advanced Studies for 12 years, I know there's things that we can't talk about, high technology, reverse engineering. Let's put all that aside and let's talk about what we can disclose. The fact that we've had contact with extraterrestrials from at least 1947. We know that for a fact. I think most senators are dealing with this in Washington right now, or House members. I'm not so much aligned with the House members I am with the Senate. They know that Roswell was real. They know what really happened. And so we want to start from there, and we want to bring this out to the American people to explain everything that the United States government, has done from 1947 on that we can disclose. So that's my my objective in the disclosure program. I read a summary talking points that the congressional staffers had created based on valid intelligence information they got from the Defense Intelligence Agency and some of the other intelligence agency. I know this is going to upset a lot of authors out there who've written books about Roswell, but what they're going to release, and I think the first part of the full disclosure is going to be history or the historical aspects. Now, I can't talk about anything before 1947. I wasn't briefed on anything, but I was briefed in 1979 when I entered the program regarding U.S. contact with extraterrestrials. I read and was briefed by U.S. Air Force officials on the Roswell incident. It actually happened in the summer of 1947, first part of June. Two crafts flying over New Mexico. Now, there's going to be a lot of arguments on how they crashed, but two of them crashed. One landed near Corona, New Mexico. A debris field, or the antenna off that craft, ended up in Roswell's ranch, but the actual craft itself ended up near Corona, New Mexico, on a ranch. We know who the rancher was. They're of course passed away. An archaeological team from Albuquerque University, New Mexico was there. They found the craft. They found a live ET. The ET was recovered, sent to a number of different bases before they eventually got to Los Alamos, where it stayed alive from 47 to 52. A second craft was found in 1949, way out west in Catron County, found by a rancher moving his cattle up to a grazing site. They found that craft is exactly the same as the one that they recovered in 1947. So two of the same species of ETs that visited Earth around that time period, we recovered those crafts. Now jump ahead to some of the ones that are really classified. In southwestern Nevada, in 1963, there was a nuclear detonation underground nuclear detonation. There was a lot of classification along with that nuclear detonation initially. Eventually, it was disclosed that the United States government, the Atomic Energy Commission, did a test in an area other than Nevada test site that was primarily the nuclear test site in New Mexico, other than overseas. But the truth in a document that Congress has showed that there was a UFO craft that crashed near Red Ant Mine, which is in Esmeralda County. And that craft contained highly toxic material, actually sickened some miners who found it, and some military personnel who later recovered it. Rather than trying to get that craft moved, they buried it, and then they conducted a nuclear detonation. You can check on this nuclear detonation. It occurred in 1963 underground, which destroyed the craft. That's just one of two that occurred like that in Nevada. A second one, same thing, craft crashed north of Warm Springs in northern Nye County. Toxic material. Some people were injured, or I think one person died. They buried the craft. Atomic Energy Commission came in and set off a large scale, I think, 800 kiloton nuclear device under the soil, destroying that craft. That's just two of many. Now, Congress knows of 12 in the United States and 16 overseas, but they're not quite sure about the 16 overseas because they can't verify them. They can verify the 12 in the United States, two of them, which I just mentioned, plus the Roswell craft. But there's many others that occurred in the United States that hopefully within these couple hours we can later discuss. You know, I was going to talk about that, but I got like 5 emails about some differences in what I was originally told and what they're telling me now. Okay. And one of the people that's telling me this is actually still working for the Defense Intelligence Agency. He's the one that told Senator Reid years ago, when Senator Reid was still alive, when Senator Reid was at the DIA headquarters in Bowling, and asked the question about where is all these files. And this particular intelligence officer, who was a friend of mine who's sending me emails, says, Senator, he was a majority leader at the time, they're right behind me in these file cabinets, but they won't let me open them. So we know that the government still keeps the records of these things. In this particular craft, the crash that happened in 2022, I learned information about it, but then some of the things that I was originally told, my contact within DIA says, hold off on that right now. So maybe before this program's over with, he'll give me some more briefings or give me some more information on this particular craft. Many different stories or incidents, some of which I actually investigated, where people showed up. One incident happened here in New Mexico some years ago. A woman is found beside her vehicle on the ground, sleeping in a very remote area of New Mexico, near a place called Fence Lake. There's virtually nothing out there, not even a lake. It's just called Fence Lake. It's on State Road 36. Very few people live in the area, only ranchers. But a highway department, New Mexico Highway Department truck was passing through there one morning and saw the vehicle and saw a body, he thought. Went over there, woke the lady up. The lady is from Bellingham, Washington. She was driving on a rainy road and she drove into fog. This is her story. And suddenly she ends up in Fence Lake, New Mexico. They call the state police, they come out, they do an investigation. Her husband had already reported her missing 36 hours prior to the Washington state authorities, the sheriff's department up there in Bellingham. And she doesn't know how she got from Bellingham, Washington, while she was driving home from work, to New Mexico, thousands of miles away. That's just one story. I don't think that they never figure that out. But there's many cases that I've seen. Some of them I talked with on Gaia. I've had some shows about that. So it happens. And why? Now, somebody sent a chat and asked about something that I was going to talk about. Our military bases on portals. Well, let me tell you a little story about Area 51. In 1953, there's a guy by the name of Air Force man by the name of Hermosa, Lieutenant Colonel Jose Hermosa. He was on a fact-finding trip to Nevada. He went to Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, remote areas, trying to find a test site, someplace where is out of the ordinary, where they could test top secret aircrafts and other projects. Well, while they were in Nye County at a mine, which is now inside Nellis Test and Training Range, the Groom Lake Mine, actually what it was called, he had a psychic experience. He walked into the mine and all he remembered was going through a portal, like he was on a trailer or something. Now, he didn't know he was psychic, but when he came out of the mine, the people that were with him, accompanying him there, said, well, where have you been? And it was some time period of like an hour and a half. He thought he was only in there for a couple seconds, but apparently the people on the outside said he was there a long time. Jump ahead. So they pick Area 51. They picked Nevada, Nye County, remote, one of the most remote counties in the United States back in the 50s. And they chose that place to test the U-2, the SR-71, and all the other things that we've tested over the period of time. Now, does that mean that Area 51 is on a portal? Sure sounds that way to me. I didn't know about this until I read this document here, which I want to talk about in a little bit also about the difference between S2 and S4. I want to put that story to bed.
Thank God. This
is a document dated in 1982, and it was formally classified document. Wendell Stevens got it, and this explains what is at Papoose Lake. It's an underground classified facility. And this is when they first started building it in the early 60s. And in 1968, the United States Air Force took over the site from the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, if you can remember back, the CIA had Groom Lake facility, except for Tonopah, in the 50s and 60s, experimenting with the U-2 and the SR-71 and some of the other planes. In 1968, the CIA wanted the Air Force to take it over. The Air Force says, okay, we'll do it eventually. And by 1974, the Air Force had control of Nellis Test and Training Range or Groom Lake. In this document, it specifically states that the facility at Papoose Lake was called Site 2. Site 2, not Site 4, Site 2. Now, eventually in 1980, this talks about the different levels. And there's an S3 and an S4. S1 was the site itself, above ground, the secret tunnel going in. S2 was the administrative control section for everything under. Now, I was at Groom Lake, Area 51, as a counterintelligence officer on 2 different occasions in the 80s. I knew S2 existed. I was never down in S4. I never claimed to be. I don't know what was down there. I never had a clearance to go down to S4, but I knew S2 was the administrative control center for everything underground. I knew there was a 3 and a 4, but I didn't know what was down there. Now, Lazar claims that the site was called S4. It's not. this document proves it was called S2. I've said it all along for years and years that it was S2. And also talked about another place, which is also mentioned in here, S2 Annex. S2 Annex was a classified special access area controlled by the United States Air Force and the Institute, the Air Force Institute for Pathology. Now, probably the only one listening would know that the Armed Forces and I know Emory does because he probably worked for him at one time. That was a Armed Forces facility in Washington, D.C. with satellite offices that did pathologies or on different strange phenomena, including ETs. And they had a facility out at S2 Annex. And guess what S2 Annex was? That's where we detained our visitors. Now, I wasn't ever briefed into that, so I don't know how we got them. I don't know why, how they were stored there or housed there. But I do know, based on this document here from the Defense Intelligence Agency, listing the different species that we knew about in the 1980s, that some of these visitors had different, they were all different, like David talked about earlier. These extraterrestrials that visited Earth, and Tim talked about it too, they were all different. They had different biological structures. They breathed different atmospheres. They ate different things. The only common thing that all of them had was they drank water. So what does that tell us? Water is the most abundant thing in the universe, probably. So these things, one particular species had to breathe some methane. So obviously they came from a planet with a methane atmosphere. So getting that off my chest, the difference between S2, S2 Annex, and S2 and S4, that's the facts. And I'm going to in my book, which if it ever gets off the ground, I'm going to put this document in there. And thanks to Wendell Stevens for giving that to me.
How's Wendell Stevens doing nowadays? Is he around anymore?
Oh, he passed away in I think 2011 or 2012. Okay. He died. But God, what a wonderful person he had within the UFO. We had with him in the UFO community. I mean, he had so much knowledge. Every UFO convention we went to, he would call a bunch of us into a room on the 11th floor of the Aquarius in Laughlin and seal the door and put his little radio transmitter up there so nobody could bug the room and tell us something that none of us has ever heard of, and then show us documents or pictures of things that just fascinated us. Now, Wendell was on the first DART team, or Down Aircraft Recovery Team, and he was the one that told me about a number of crash sites that I never knew about. I mean, I knew some, but I didn't know about them. I didn't know about all of them. And he talked about the ones in Nevada. And going back to the ones in Nevada, I forgot to mention the two that crashed in Nevada that were then buried, and we had nuclear detonations. If you look in, you can look on the internet, look in the atomic energy, the old files, explosion number 343 or test 343 was called the Shoal, SHOAL detonation, occurred on October 26th of 1963, and it was near Fallon, Nevada, but it was near, if you look at the map, it's right near the Red Ant mine. And that was the one craft that crashed. They couldn't ever do anything with, because it now, as I understand, it killed 5 people because it was so toxic. Now, I don't know if it was toxic because of the materials once it entered our atmosphere and crashed, or maybe the ETs on board. I don't know that. The second one was test number 528. It was called Faultless, FAULTLESS. It occurred on January 19th, 1968, near Moray Canyon, which is in north of Warm Springs, Nevada. And that was, again, a craft that had crashed. They didn't know what to do with it because it was toxic material or whatever reason. They buried it. and a nuclear detonation of a 700 kiloton size destroyed it. Or at least they hoped it destroyed it. They buried it, I think, I don't know how many feet underground, but for your listeners, you want to check on this, check it, Google it on the internet, and you're going to find exactly what I just mentioned.
Richard, that was great. I got to get something off my chest too, real quick, and two things. I know Tim's been talking about a lot of these grays, and I mentioned on my programs all the different species that I've been involved with, that I've tested, that I was directly involved with. And I do have to say what you guys said. There is one more thing that I noticed with the majority of them. They all have the 5-point star. So 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. And they are definitely water-based. I want to back up Tim because there's some confusion online a few weeks ago when he was mentioning all the different types of grays. And I want to say, for every ET that I ever mentioned, there's so many different kinds of the same ET, which I want to point out. That was a great thing that you said, Tim, a couple weeks ago online. And that also goes for us. Look at us humans here on planet Earth. There's many different kinds, different colors, different shapes and sizes. And that also goes into the stars, so everyone knows. So even though I did mention grays at some point, there's a plethora of different types of grays. I just want to get that. And plus, I also want to get back to the crashes. Everyone's asking me about the crash in Nevada. So it's right down the road from my house here. Yes, that was real. It was captured on hundreds of Ring cameras. It was also captured on dozens of police officer cameras on their, their cameras that they carry on them. And they did go to that house, and there was an extraterrestrial, 2 of them there actually, but that was not a crash landing. That was more of an emergency landing. They had to land. Whether they got shot down by our neutrino light detectors, I don't know that information, but I do have good information here with the police and everyone that was involved with that. And they did take their phones, by the way. They did install a government camera in their backyard just to monitor to see who's coming in and out and what they're going to be saying. So it's interesting to see what happens to this family a few weeks from now. But yeah, that was an actual incident. It was also captured by Nellis Air Force Base with their radars, and the same thing with the airport. That stuff, I don't know when they're going to come out with it, if they will, but I just want to bury that real quick. These extraterrestrials have the ability to flux in and out. They did camouflage themselves. Some of them were caught on camera. The craft also was still there, was just fluxing in and out, and that dematerialized later on that evening. There was a huge investigation, an ongoing investigation. So I just want to get that out of the way, because a lot of people are talking about, and it's been happening actually more than often here in and near Las Vegas. Very interesting things are happening, but they're not reporting it. I think there's going to be more and more of this, just not here in Nevada, but all around the world. It happens all the time.
Let me jump in here real quick, because I have a lot of information about that incident in North Las Vegas, the Gomez family that occurred in April 30th, May 1st timeframe. We actually went up there. Two of our members of our advanced working group, they spent hours, many hours on the ground, speaking with people, police officers, neighbors. There's a neighbor in the area that actually took 2 photographs of the creature climbing over the fence. Now, the cell phone videos that you see, I don't know how they did this, but they were, according to one of the people that lives in the Gomez house, these things seem to come and go. But I think what they were trying to say, now, remember, their first language is Spanish, and we actually had a person on the ground that spoke Spanish. They were relating it more like coming and going as materializing and dematerializing. I think that's what we figured that they were trying to explain. But the neighbor who just spoke perfect English, he lived to the west of or to the east of the house. He actually took a picture of the creature coming over the fence. It scared him so bad that he was going to destroy his cell phone. he thought that the thing was coming after him because he took a picture of him, but I never got into his house. It got into his backyard, and then he lost track of it. Maybe it dematerialized or whatever, however it escaped. Also, we found out that the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI, my former employer, my former branch, the Special Projects branch out at Area 51, sent investigators there to the scene. One of the names of the investigators was disclosed to one of the family members because he spoke Spanish. He had a Hispanic name, and he spoke Spanish to him, and they remember his name. Now that agent actually works out at Area 51. So what does that mean? That means that the Air Force Office of Special Investigations is investigating this. Now, we also found out later, this is just right around just before the 4th of July, that the FISA application was submitted on the residents' cell phones. Now, FISA is a federal surveillance intelligence warrant issued by Washington, D.C. Now, you're never going to get it in FOIA because it's classified. Now, we had somebody hinted to us that there was a FOIA request. Now, a application is a request for a warrant. It's not an actual warrant. It's just a request. An application is a statement of probable cause for issuance of a warrant. The only person who can issue a warrant is the judges up there in Washington, D.C. Now, I don't know if there was ever one issued, but there was a submission of a request for one. Now, who can do that? The FBI can do it. Any federal law enforcement agency can do it. AFOSI is a federal law enforcement agency. The FBI is a federal law enforcement agency. DEA, IRS, federal marshals. But we don't know who submitted it. But it was suggested to us that one was submitted. We also have a police officer who is actually retired now. He retired July 1st. He was a North Las Vegas precinct police officer. He wasn't there initially, but he came 2 days later with a team of people. And he thought that people were from the Federal Terrorist Task Force, but he found out that they weren't because the two other officers that were with him, who were with the task force, didn't know any of them. But they actually went in and installed cameras in this property. Now, he's not sure if there was a warrant or if it was surreptitious entry, clandestine, or whatever. But there was cameras placed inside that area, that residence. And now jump ahead to just 5 days ago. The family's in hiding. They talked by telephone to a reporter out of KLS, George Knapp station. They also talked to a person who we know, Rebecca. I would just give her her first name, Rebecca, who works for an investigative company that works with the History Channel, and she's getting a lot of information that she's relaying to us. And I would say that if I was give a percentage of if this was an actual event, I'd say 80% chance that an actual ET landed there for some reason. I don't know why. And they showed themselves for some particular reason. Well, what I was going to talk about is the incident happened in Brazil, the Virginia case in 1996, and how it relates to other incidents that happened between 1996 and 1985, other landings in South America, Mexico, and also in the southern part of the United States. The Needles incident, the Needles, California incident. I think most viewers and most listeners know that in Brazil had a almost like a Roswell incident. It was at Virginia, Varginha incident in Brazil. In 1996, Air Force Office of Special Investigations went down there. They came out of a support activity in Peru. They were staged out of an airbase in Sao Paulo. And they sent a whole team, a DART team down the aircraft recovery team. One of the agents that was involved, retired agent Clifford Reed, unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. He spoke at a UFO convention about this, so he didn't go into any great details because it was still classified. But the craft that was recovered in Brazil was brought back to the United States on a Navy ship. It was too big to be flown. I think the largest plane we had back and that day was the C-5. And if I'm wrong, David, correct me, but I think the C-5 was the largest plane. It couldn't get in there, and they couldn't take it apart. Yeah. So they put it on a Navy ship. They transported to a port east of Sao Paulo, put it on a ship, U.S. Navy ship, and brought it all the way back to the closest port they could get it in was Long Beach. And then they got it from Long Beach, traveling only at night. And I think there was some photographs taken of this, although it was covered, and finally got to the western gate of Nellis Test and Training Range, which is near Tonopah Air Force Base in the western part of the Test and Training Range. It was taken in there and then eventually transported over to Area 51 for analysis. How do I know this? One of the members of our advanced working group was on the team, the DART team down there. Also, Wendell Stevens had a whole presentation about this, including 4 Brazilian Air Force officers that were involved in this incident and that assisted in the recovery of this aircraft, of this downed craft. Now, one of the things they learned about this craft, and I'm not a technical person, although I do teach advanced math, I still teach it online at the Defense Continuing Education Program. So I teach theory of probability, combinations, permutations, things like that. But I'm not a technical person. But one of the things I found out that this craft had in it was when the craft was about 45 feet in diameter. And when you walked into the craft, it looked like the craft was 5 times larger than it really was from the outside. Now, I'm sure Tim or David can explain. I know my former employee, Hal Putoff, could explain why that happens. But one of the amazing things about this craft was that when you walked inside of it, it looked like it was 10 times bigger. And that was an amazing thing that we learned. And I don't know if we knew about this before, but that's one of the things that we and plus this craft had a type of atmosphere inside. It was pressurized, but not the type of pressurization that you would see inside an aircraft or a airliner. It was a type that was a flowing, motioned system that protected the pilots, the aliens, from gravity and from the excessive G's that were forced on this craft. We don't know how it worked, at least back in that time period. We didn't know how it worked. I'm sure we figured it out today, and I think we probably have something that we've reverse engineered regarding that. But those are the things. That's the thing I wanted to bring up right now, and I have some other things later that. And I have some questions that some of my devoted fans and your fans out of Gaia have, and Tim's fans out of Gaia has sent us. There's 5 questions that some of the very hard-nosed and fans out there, and we can talk about that later. I think one of the things I wanted to say earlier, which I hope we have enough time to discuss because
Oh,
we're
we
going to
did.
get into,
We're going to go over. a
we're going
little
to get
bit.
in, okay, we're going to get in a lot of discussion on this.
Yes.
I got a question from a man who watches all of us on Gaia, loves us all, is a strong supportive of Gaia. And this is his question. We have heard from many U.S. government officials, such as Sean Kirkpatrick, director of the Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, Lou Elizondo, former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Chris Mellon, former Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, Captain David Grush, former U.S. Intelligence Officer, Dr. Hal Puthoff, former director of Project 99, about the secret UAP UFO reverse engineering program controlled by DARPA. Can anyone talk about Project 99? Now, I hope we don't get cut off by the government for me going into Project 99, but I'm going to tell it. I'm going to tell it like it is.
Thank you, Richard.
In 1980, prior to President Reagan taking office, between when he was elected in November 7th and when he took office, actually in January 20th or whenever it was, he was briefed by the Central Intelligence Agency on a number of different programs. He was also briefed by Dr. Hans Mark, who was the Secretary of the Air Force at the time, and about a particular threat that the United States received or obtained this information from another source. Anyways, when President Reagan took office in January of 1991, his very, very first thing after the Iran-Contra not the Iran-Contra, the Iranian situation was taken care of, which it was already taken care of. I mean, the hostages were already en route home. But one of the first things he asked the Central Intelligence Agency director was, Stansfield Turner, was, I want to know everything you have on the subject of unidentified flying objects. I want to know everything and don't hide anything from me. Well, eventually, after Caspar Weinberger and some of the others, Casey became director of CIA, the president was briefed. Now, some of these transcripts has been leaked onto the internet and they're actual factual information. But one of the things that he wanted was how we can protect the Earth from an alien invasion. And there are a number of projects that were already in the works, such as the Strategic Defense Initiative. That was actually started in the Carter administration, of the ideas on paper. But Reagan wanted it to be implemented. He wanted those plans to be fully implemented. He wanted a system to protect Earth from incoming, not outgoing from the Earth, but incoming threats from space. And one of the projects that the Pentagon and Caspar Weinberger started was this Project 99. The Project 99 was a project, a highly classified project back in those days, as SCI, Sensitive Compartment Information project, that dealt with advanced technologies that we already had or that we could develop quickly, put in space to protect Earth from anything coming in. Now, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which you can read volumes and volumes and volumes on the internet, one particular document that was declassified from Los Alamos, you can go to Los Alamos and find this document on the Strategic Defense Initiative. Most of the documents are redacted, but there's one page in there that says, a scientist that was working on this says, we have to figure out how we can create these satellite systems with weapons on board that can be turned around so they can be aimed at space and not just at threats coming from the Earth, such as Soviets or at that particular time period, Soviets and the Chinese rockets or ICBMs. We have to figure out how we can turn these crafts around so these weapon systems can be pointed into space. Now, if you read that, it's just a paragraph. That makes you think of, well, it's already, you know what the other redacted stuff is we have a threat coming in. Now, you know that Reagan has talked about this on a number of occasions to the United Nations, to private enterprises, to speeches that he gave to the Central Intelligence Agency, classified speeches, to the Pentagon, that he knew about this threat. He was worried about this threat. But one of the things that we don't know is what particular ET race were we worried about? Now, I don't know that. Maybe Tim knows. I know Tim wasn't around back in those days, but maybe Tim knows. I've never found any literature. I haven't found anybody that actually will talk about it. I mean, I know people who were with our working group that was around back then and worked for the Pentagons, even some way before that. I have a good friend that lives right here in Albuquerque, just down the street from me, who worked for the Central Intelligence Agency for 35 years and knows everything there is, but he won't seem to talk about that either. There's a different ways that we look at it. United States looks at it, and different ways that the German government or British government. The British government has come out recently and made some statements that kind of shocked people. Even Nick Pope. Nick and I did a show out at California a few weeks ago. It's going to air sometime. And one of the things we found out was we talk about United States preparation for invasion or the ET contacts, where I know Randy Kramer talks about this, but others have talked about it. We had a presentation at a UFO convention a couple of years ago about a United States Marine who says the United States Marines, nothing to do with Randy, prepared their force recon or their commando teams to fight ETs. Now we just in February this year, we have a retired Special Air Service British SAS officer who came out and said, guess what? We did too. The United States came over to UK in the 1980s and trained the SAS with special tactics dealing with extraterrestrials. So that's one. Now, we also heard that they've done that with the Danish army, the Norwegian army, but I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that. So we're preparing. We did prepare, but the way I look at it personally is if an ET race, any of these 5 ET races that I know about, if they wanted to destroy planet Earth or kill all humans, they would have already done that years ago. And so I don't think they're here for that reason. I think they're here for some other reason. And whether we can get inside their minds and understand them, I don't think so. I mean, they're different. They're alien species coming from a different planet, different biology, different anatomy, different lifestyles. It would be very difficult for us to foresee what they're going to do to planet Earth. Yeah, the Katie Smith story. A lot of people ask me about the Katie Smith story. Does OSI still go out and look for those type of people that have unique gifts? Yeah, they do. They do still go out and find people with a psychic ability or Katie Smith's ability because she was a hybrid. And we know she was a hybrid because there's a way now that we can test people to determine they're hybrid, and I don't know exactly how they do that, but Emory does. But we still do it. U.S. intelligence still does that. Okay, the crash site, the Corona crash site in 47. There were a number of things recovered from the extraterrestrial craft. the communications device, the energy device, some other tools that were used to facilitate certain things inside the craft were found. Now, we didn't know what they were initially. It took some time for us to figure out what each one was used for. But fortunately, we had we had a live ET that was in captivity from 4752, and he somehow explained what some of these devices were. But as far as the bars go, I think you're talking about the items that were used to facilitate or repair the craft. Well, I can only state what I knew from 1979 to 1988. I'm going to give the rest of this time to Tim because he can comment further. But during my time, we knew of 5 races: the Greys, which was the ones that crashed at Roswell; the Archeloids, they're from the Epsilon Eridani star group; the Quataloids, they're from the Sirius star system; the Hepaloids from the Tau Ceti star group; and the Trantiloids from the Andromeda star group. Now, why are they called Archeloids? I don't know. DIA named them. There has to be some reason why they named them that, but I'm not smart enough to figure it out, and nobody that I've spoken with within DIA could answer that question. Well, okay, let me tell you a real quick story, kind of funny. In 1981, I was investigating the Paul Benowitz case, the Cowrie Canyon case, many other cases involving UFOs, UAPs. Back then it was UFOs. And one day, and then we in the Paul Benowitz case, we got Myrna Hansen involved. She became involved in that case. She had been a abductee that was brought to us by Paul Benowitz. She'd already been seen by Dr. Ellen Hynek, Leo Sprinkle. Anyways, one day I'm in my office, the OSI office, and our security person called me and said, "You got 2 people from headquarters here to see you." And I said, "Well, who are they?" And they told me, the security officer gave me the names. I didn't know who they were. And I said, "Well, did you check their badges? Are they?" Yeah, they're cleared. So they come in my office, and I said, "Yeah." And I shook their hands, and they introduced themselves. I said, what can I do for you guys?" They said, "Yeah, we're here on a Myrna Hansen case." I said, "You're here from where?" "From DIA. I said, oh, DIA is in Defense Intelligence Agency now, is interested in this case. "Yeah, we're from the," and he gave me the code for a particular office. And I said, what's that office do? He says, "We investigate abductions." And before this, I had never been briefed into abductions. I didn't know they existed. And I said, "You mean to tell me abductions are real?" And they both looked at me and said, "Yeah, they are." And I said, "Oh my God." And he said, "You're not briefed into it?" And so now we're in a conundrum there, because here they're in my office asking me for information about something that I'm not cleared for. So they had to clear me, and they got me read into the program. And then that's when I realized that abductions were real, and that they really were happening, and they were involved in extraterrestrials. Now, as something Dave Emery said, there are a lot of fake abductions out there. There are a lot of people who claim they were abducted and never were. They want publicity, they want whatever. But there are legitimate abductions. I investigated many of them after I was briefed into the program. And so there's a phenomena out there, abduction phenomena, that's real. Now, who's doing the abduction? They all seem to be, as Emery said, gray. Now, I always thought that the gray Ebens from the Roswell crash site were the benevolent ones. They were the nice ones, the friendly ones. They wouldn't hurt a soul. At least that's what Evil One told us the one that we found in the spacecraft. But well, let me just say that in a few years ago, in 2016, the United States government military tested 2 energy weapons down in Antarctica in a cave under the ice. Zeus was one of the. It was called Project Zeus, and the other one is the name of it is classified. But they tested this energy weapon that they created, probably from the ETs, and it created. It was kind of like the Trinity site. They didn't know exactly how massive the destruction would be, and that's why they chose Antarctica and under the ice. So they tested it at what they thought was low energy, but it created a cavern, hundreds of thousands of square feet, more, 3 times more than what that was anticipated. And I don't want to steal any thunder from anybody. I have to credit some of this to Linda Bolton Howell. She had a source that talked about this. The second weapon system that they tested 1 month, exactly 30 days later, at a different place apparently on the other side of Antarctica, under the ground, was another energy weapon, but it was different in some respect, and that caused another huge cavern, bigger than what they would have anticipated. Something similar to what Oppenheimer, of course, a new movie came out, said about Trinity. The detonation at Trinity site, he wasn't sure if it would destroy Earth, but that's something that were tested down there. So we know that we found some relics down there. We found a old submarine under the ice. Did a show on Gaia regarding that, and it was proven by the United States Navy later. Quick, one of the movies I was an advisor on was Arrival.
Oh wow! I
Which
love it.
it was a different look at an extraterrestrial race that,
Love it.
and we had 2 different scientists, and we had an anthropologist, and we had a zoologist on staff, and also another doctor who all of you know, but I can't name. There, and when the original script was written, that the bipedal creatures were supposed to be little, but somebody came in from the Defense Intelligence Agency and said, "Hey, listen, if you guys want a really realistic the script, let's add this to the script." And they actually brought in pictures of sketches of these ETs and the type of crafts that they would probably be coming in. Now, I didn't know anything about it officially through the government, but the script was rewritten and some other things were added, and the movie was I think a pretty good success.
Yeah. Aggressive with that, because you were brought into this and boom, here it is. What was your first?
Well,
Yeah.
well, I had no knowledge of the subject matter. Well, I mean, I knew about UFOs growing up.
Right.
I grew up in a military family. My father was a colonel. My uncle, Edward Doty, he was on Project Blue Book, investigated Alanis Morissette case. My cousin, his son, my Edward's son, Richard L, worked for the CIA. But when I joined, I was in the regular Air Force as a combat controller, got out, went to college, joined the intelligence community. And I had never at any time during my training in intelligence, either at the Air Force OSI Academy or at the Officer Intelligence Course, DIA, was the word UFO used. We were never taught anything about UFOs whatsoever. And so here I am at Kirtland Air Force Base, the counterintelligence officer for the base, and the Coyote Canyon incident happens, a landing out there. And so I'm investigating this and not really knowing what I'm doing. My boss calls me in. He's a GM 14. He calls me in and tells me, you need to get a special briefing because of what you're doing. So then they sent me over to the Air Force Special Security Office on the west side of Kirtland, the Air Force Weapons Laboratory, as Emery would know. They have a special security office in there. Only highly classified stuff's discussed in there. I go in there and I'm briefed by me and others in the room. I wasn't the only one in there. We were briefed into this program regarding our contact, the United States government's contact with extraterrestrials from 1947 on. I sat in that room, watched the film, listened to this Air Force colonel speak, and what was going through my mind was, this is some sort of a psychological operation.
Right.
They're trying to
Tested.
put us in a psychological situation. Now, we already went through that in the intelligence operations course, where they made us go in a hole and they put us in all these scenarios. You can never win at, but you had to go right up until the end. And I know David knows about some of those scenarios. And so I thought, is this for real? And I didn't say this. I didn't ask any stupid questions. But when it was over with, the colonel was standing at the door with his Air Force Chief Master Sergeant. And as we were leaving, they were shaking our hands and saying, good luck. And here's some other sources you can get into. Now you have this particular security clearance. And I said to the colonel, I said, you know what, sir, if I may ask, I'm a lowly, GS9, but is all of this for real? And he looks at me with a very, very straight face. I mean, no signs of laughter, no other expression, but said, "You goddamn right, it's real." And he got my attention. So I get in my OSI car and I'm driving over to the east side of Kirtland, which is about 10 miles away. And I stop at the property disposal office. You probably know where that's at, yes. Emery. I pulled into the parking lot and I just sat there and I'm trying to realize or rationalize what I just received. And I thought, my God, must be real. I mean, I can't understand why they would do this to us, because not everybody in that room was intelligence officers. So I got back to the office and I go into my boss's office and he kind of looks at me with a smudge on his face, a smirk on his face. I mean, he says, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Sir, just tell me one thing. Is it for real?" He said, "You're goddamn right, it's for real." I said, "You must have got the same briefing that I got from the colonel." But anyways, I said, okay. So of course, from that point on, during my investigations, I realized that everything that I was taught or got briefed into that briefing is factual. And that's my, because before this, growing up, my brother, I have a brother older than me, he believed in UFOs. He read George Adamski books. He read True magazines. I didn't pay any attention to that stuff. I love Zane Grey. I love Westerns. But, now I realize that everything that I was briefed into and everything I've done from 1979 until 1988, and even through my time at the Institute for Advanced Studies, is real. We have been contacted. We did have a crash site in Roswell, and everything else I experienced during that time is factual.